Susan Ashworth enters her villain era against her own life, deciding she's literally done with everything. Living that isolated life with only her cats for company, she decides to rage quit existence by swallowing a whole bottle of pills. She thinks she's about to log off permanently and find some peace, but the universe clearly has zero chill and isn't about to let her ghost the world that easily. Instead of fading to black, Susan wakes up in a weird limbo state that feels like a fever dream. She's wandering through this foggy landscape that's giving major Silent Hill energy, completely confused about why she isn't dead yet. The vibe is absolutely rancid, and she's trying to figure out if she's lost or if this is just what the afterlife looks like for sad girls. She arrives at this creepy cottage and meets an old woman who calls herself the Queen of Maggots, which is honestly a massive red flag right off the bat. This lady is gaslighting Susan about her life choices, acting like she's been watching her stream the whole time. Susan is just trying to dissociate, but this entity is determined to have a main character moment with her. The Queen of Maggots starts yapping about how she's basically a god in this realm, explaining her name comes from feeding on the dead. She's throwing serious shade at Susan's attempt to unalive herself, claiming she's the only friend Susan has in this twisted reality. It's giving toxic bestie energy, but Susan is trapped and has to listen to this supernatural monologue. Here comes the plot twist. The Queen isn't letting Susan rest. She offers a deal that Susan literally can't refuse because she's being forced into it. Susan has to go back to the living world and take out 5 parasites, basically psychopaths who deserve to get wrecked. The Queen frames it as a chance for Susan to fix her broken life, but it sounds more like she's being recruited as a supernatural hitman. Susan tries to say no thanks to this whole resurrection arc because she just wants the pain to stop. But the Queen is gatekeeping death. She reveals that Susan is now immortal and literally cannot die until the task is done. It's actually tragic because Susan just wants to sleep forever, but now she's cursed to respawn every time she takes an L. Before sending her back, the Queen demands a sacrifice because there's always a catch with these magical contracts. Susan has to blow out a candle representing her soul and spill some blood, which is incredibly extra. It's a dark ritual that seals her fate, forcing her to accept that her suicide attempt was a massive fail, and she's about to re-enter the server. Susan wakes up in a hospital bed, and the doctor, Andrew, is acting way too cheerful for someone who just revived a suicide patient. He's giving NPC energy, reciting medical stats while Susan just wants to go home. She's stuck in the recovery ward, which feels more like a prison, and she has to deal with the reality that she's still very much alive and miserable. A nurse named Liz comes in to check Susan's vitals, and she is the absolute sweetest human, which is suspicious in this dark game. She tries to bond with Susan, yapping about her own life and how lucky Susan is to be alive. Liz is trying so hard to be a comfort character, but Susan is keeping her guard up because trust issues are her entire personality right now. Susan recounts the dream she had about the field and the old woman, trying to process the trauma. She realizes the Queen of Maggots might have been real, or at least a hallucination that hits different. Liz listens but tries to rationalize it as a coma dream, unaware that Susan is actually the chosen one for a Grim Reaper side quest. Liz spills the tea about the hospital's head psychiatrist, Dr. X, warning Susan that he's a total creep. Rumor has it he's a womanizer who gets too personal with patients, which is a major ick. Liz mentions he smells weird and has a shady history with a former nurse, basically flagging him as the villain of this level before Susan even meets him. Dr. X finally shows up for a therapy session, and the vibes are instantly atrocious. He starts digging into Susan's childhood trauma, asking about her parents' deaths with zero empathy. He's pretending to be professional, but it feels like an interrogation where he's getting off on her misery. Susan is uncomfortable but trapped in this psychological game with a guy who is clearly a predator. Susan tries to sneak around the hospital because she's desperate to escape this toxic environment. She runs into security guards who are basically acting like NPCs with limited dialogue trees, blocking her path. The frustration is real as she realizes she's locked in a psych ward where everyone treats her like she's fragile while she just wants to bounce. She meets a patient in the next room who is completely losing it, talking in riddles about red stuff and spider hearts. This lady is clearly hallucinating or sensing the dark energy of the place. She begs Susan to get her medication, pulling Susan into a fetch quest that reveals just how neglected and messed up the patients in this ward really are. Susan navigates the hospital's dark corridors, which seem to shift into a nightmare version of reality. She's trying to find the drugs for the neighbor while dodging the staff. It's giving survival horror as she realizes the hospital is a front for something much darker, and the line between sanity and the supernatural is getting blurrier by the minute. Dr. X catches Susan wandering around and goes full gaslight mode, acting like a concerned dad while clearly threatening her. He insists she's sick and needs special treatment, which is code for something nefarious. He forces her back into the assessment room, and Susan realizes this guy isn't just a bad doctor, he's definitely one of the parasites she was warned about. In a forced confession, Susan opens up about why she tried to end it all, describing the crushing weight of her depression. It's a raw, emotional moment where she admits she feels obsolete and unloved. Dr. X listens, but instead of helping, he seems to be collecting her pain like a trophy, proving he's actually the worst kind of emotional vampire. Liz wakes Susan up in the middle of the night, panicking and saying they need to escape immediately. It feels like a rescue mission, and Susan blindly trusts her because Liz is the only green flag in this entire building. They run through the corridors, dodging guards, heading for the roof, with the tension ramping up to a breaking point. On the roof, things take a horrific turn. Liz is acting strange, manic, and suddenly jumps off the edge. Susan tries to stop her, but it's too late. However, it's immediately revealed to be a mind game orchestrated by Dr. X, who drugged Susan to make her think Liz committed suicide. It's peak manipulation, and Susan is absolutely devastated, thinking she failed her only friend. Susan wakes up strapped to a chair in Dr. X's secret torture dungeon. He reveals his true nature as a collector of art, which basically means he murders depressed women to hear them scream. It's absolutely sick. But he doesn't know Susan is immortal. She breaks free, driven by pure rage, and realizes this is her moment to serve justice. The tables turn completely as Susan unleashes her fury on Dr. X. She brutally kills him, fulfilling the Queen's contract for the first time. It's a gory, intense scene where Susan transitions from victim to avenger. She saves another victim he had captive, realizing that her cursed life actually has a purpose, taking out the trash of humanity. Susan finally returns to her apartment, but the vibe is heavy. She's traumatized, but also numb, back in her messy, lonely flat. Her cats are the only ones welcoming her home. She tries to integrate back into her sad routine, but she's changed now. She's a killer and an immortal being, and sitting on the couch watching TV just doesn't hit the same anymore. A chaotic young girl named Mitzi breaks into Susan's flat, literally picking the lock like it's nothing. Mitzi is high energy, annoying, and refuses to leave, practically demanding to rent a room. Susan tries to kick her out, but Mitzi is persistent and charming in a pushy way, bringing a chaotic, good energy that crashes into Susan's depressive solitude. Mitzi reveals she has a hunch about things, claiming she knew Susan was in trouble before. She's suspicious, but also strangely perceptive. Mitzi admits she's basically homeless and desperate, and Susan, despite her grumpiness, starts to cave. It's the beginning of an unlikely duo, the suicidal Immortal and the overly optimistic Squatter. Just as things settle, Susan goes downstairs to check on the cats and gets jumped by a pest control guy. He drugs her and drags her off. It's a terrifying shift from domestic drama back to horror. Susan wakes up in a slaughterhouse environment, realizing she's been kidnapped by a couple of absolute maniacs who hate cats and apparently eat people. Susan meets the kidnappers, a husband and wife who are literally cannibals. The wife is jealous and pours bleach on Susan's face, blinding her temporarily. It's body horror central. They taunt her, treating her like livestock. These are definitely the next parasites on the list, and they are disgusting, cruel people who have absolutely zero redeeming qualities. Blind and desperate, Susan manages to contact Mitzi using a phone she finds. Mitzi becomes her eyes, guiding her through the ordeal remotely. It's an intense bonding moment where Mitzi proves she's a real one, helping Susan navigate the nightmare. They realize they have to kill these people to escape, shifting the genre to a gritty revenge thriller. Back in the safety of the apartment after the escape, or during a flashback planning phase, Mitzi opens up about her own tragic backstory. She reveals she has terminal brain cancer and only has months to live. This context redefines her manic pixie dream girl energy as a desperate race against time to finish her unfinished business before she dies. Mitzi drops the lore about her boyfriend, Jack. He committed suicide because of an internet troll called the Eye of Adam, who encourages people to unalive themselves. Mitzi's main quest is to find this guy and confront him. It turns out the troll lives in their building, which is a wild coincidence, but it gives Susan and Mitzi a shared mission. Mitzi explains the specific method Jack used to kill himself, a mix of household chemicals that creates poison gas. She teaches Susan the recipe as a way to help her escape the cannibals. It's dark knowledge passed between two broken people, turning a tool of suicide into a weapon for survival against the parasites holding Susan captive. Susan uses the chemical knowledge to create a trap for the cannibal husband. She mixes bleach and pesticide, creating a deadly gas cloud. It's a big brain move that turns the tables. The husband walks right into it, choking on his own cruelty. Susan watches him die with cold satisfaction, proving she's becoming a proficient hunter of these monsters. Earlier, Susan tried calling the police, but the operator was useless, thinking Susan was having a mental episode because of her history. It's a frustrating critique of the system failing victims. Realizing nobody is coming to save her, Susan accepts that she has to be the one to clean up the mess, reinforcing her role as a vigilante. Susan makes it back home, battered but alive. She and Mitzi have a quiet moment eating pancakes, solidifying their friendship. Mitzi is the daughter Susan never got to raise, and Susan is the protector Mitzi needs. They decide to team up to find the Eye of Adam in their apartment block, turning the game into a detective mystery. They create a battle plan to investigate the neighbors. They draw a map of the building and start profiling everyone to figure out who the troll is. It's giving only murders in the building, but with more depression and trauma. They have to narrow down the suspects, which involves breaking into flats and being generally nosy. While investigating, Susan gets triggered by flowers, which sends her into a massive flashback about her past life. We see her husband Eric and their baby Zoe. It's a heartbreaking glimpse into the happiness she lost. The contrast between her past domestic bliss and her current dark reality hits hard, explaining why she's so broken. Mitzi comforts Susan after the flashback, showing genuine empathy. They bond over their shared damage. Susan starts to see Mitzi not just as a nuisance, but as a partner. They realize they are both fighting their own ghosts, Susan's past and Mitzi's impending death. It's a wholesome moment in the middle of a very dark narrative. The flashback continues, revealing the specific day everything went wrong. Eric comes home angry after a bad day, and they have a massive fight. It's raw and realistic marital strife. The tension is high, and Susan reveals how the relationship crumbled under stress, leading to the negligence that caused the tragedy. The fight escalates, and in the chaos, they forget to close a window or check on the baby. The tragic reveal is that the baby died because of the flowers Susan received from a secret admirer, or just flowers she liked, which caused an allergic reaction. It's a gut-wrenching twist that explains Susan's guilt and why she hates flowers so much. Back in the present, they investigate Brian, the angry bald neighbor. They suspect he might be the troll because he's aggressive and rude. They break into his place or spy on him, finding out he's just a sad, angry man with a weird obsession, but probably not the mastermind they are looking for. He's a red herring with anger issues. They interview the old man in the building, pretending to do a survey. He's grumpy and talks about his dead wife, which is sad but seemingly innocent. He denies having a computer, making him seem unlikely to be an internet troll. They cross him off the list, not realizing the connection he has to the real villain. During the investigation, they find catnip in a sofa, realizing the previous tenants were cool. It's a small detail that adds world building. They also mess with the neighbors, finding small joys in their petty revenge. It shows Susan starting to enjoy life again, even if it's through breaking rules and snooping. They enter Joe Davis's flat, which is a total horror show. It's filthy, with holes in the floor and weird writing on the walls. Joe is clearly mentally unstable, living in squalor. They find a laptop but need a power cable. The atmosphere is tense as they realize Joe is dangerous, unpredictable, and possibly living in a different reality. Joe catches them, or they find him, and he's talking to his wife, Ivy. The plot twist is that Ivy is a corpse, or a hallucination of one. Joe is completely delusional, thinking she's just getting ready. It's disturbing and tragic. Susan manages to de-escalate or escape, realizing Joe isn't the troll, he's just a broken soul haunting his own life. They investigate Pauline, the neighbor with the baby. They pretend to be nanny agency workers to get in. It's a comedic infiltration scene. They realize Pauline is normal, just a stressed mom. However, they find out she's giving her baby up for adoption or something shady, but she's definitely not the internet troll targeting suicides. To get out of a tight spot or to access a locked room, they cut the power to the building. It causes chaos, but allows them to slip away. It's another example of their chaotic teamwork. Mitzi is hacking locks, Susan is distracting people. They are becoming a smooth criminal operation, fueled by coffee and vengeance. They decide to prank Brian by dressing Susan up as the Cat Widow, a local urban legend. It's revenge for him hating cats. Susan scares the living daylights out of him, which is petty but satisfying. It serves as a bit of comic relief, but also shows Susan embracing her identity as the scary cat lady, turning it into a weapon. Suddenly, they receive a note slipped under the door. It's from the Eye of Adam. He knows they are looking for him and invites them to Flat 5 at midnight. The hunters have become the hunted. The tension skyrockets as they realize he's been watching them the whole time. They prepare for the final boss battle. They arrive at Flat 5 and meet the old man again. He confesses that the Eye of Adam is his son, who lives in the back room. The old man has been enabling him, but is now filled with regret. He gives them the key, knowing his son is a monster. It's a tragic betrayal of a father who knows his son needs to be stopped. They enter the room to find the Eye of Adam is a paralyzed man in a wheelchair who communicates via eye-tracking software. It's a shocking reveal. The internet monster is physically helpless. Mitzi pulls a gun, ready to execute him for Jack's death. The troll wants to die. He's goading her into doing it, revealing his final trap is to take them down with him via gas tanks. Susan talks Mitzi down. She realizes that killing him gives him exactly what he wants, a dramatic exit that kills them all. Mitzi lowers the gun, choosing mercy and denying him the satisfaction. They leave him to rot in his miserable existence. It's a powerful moment where they choose life over death. Breaking the cycle of violence, the story jumps forward. Mitzi eventually passes away from her cancer, but she dies at peace. Susan is healed. She's no longer suicidal. She runs a blog, has friends, and has accepted her past. The Queen of Maggots is gone, or ignored. Susan has learned to live again, proving that even after the darkest night, you can still find the sunrise. It's a hopeful, wholesome ending.